Due to popular demand, today we're gonna be talking about early dungeons, dungeon leveling. What are the best classes to take into a dungeon? And we're gonna sort them out in a nice little tier list. Now, here's the thing, the little caveat. When it comes to doing a dungeon efficiently, you got two ideal situations here. You are either melee cleaving, where you stack melees and a healer, or where you're spell cleaving and you get a bunch of casters and you basically just AoE everything down. Both of them will work very well, but usually you gotta commit to one. If you get a little casters and a little melees, that's a bit of a mess. You lose a lot of efficiency because you gotta both drink to get the DPS's mana back, and you also do not have a lot of AoE because you got some melees. You almost always wanna commit to either one of them. But having that said, let's go over some of the classes. First of all, we got the Druid. The Druid can tank DPS or heal. Now, a Druid is usually gonna level in Feral, and Druids usually take cat talents, and they do not take bear talents. That's like one of the huge problems with the Druid. Instead of making it a single talent, you gotta take a separate talent for crit as a bear or crit as a cat, attack power as a cat. There is this threat modifier add-on, and the bear is pretty much unusable without the threat modifier add-on. And if you are leveling as a cat, you don't really take this talent. So what I am trying to say is a purposely built bear can do kinda well in a dungeon, but your average bear that is leveling on a leveling spec is not gonna have all the good bear talents, so they are gonna suck for leveling. When it comes to cats, cats are a joke. Cats do no freaking damage at all. They have no cleaving whatsoever. Cats are absolutely useless. Never take one to a dungeon. I'm sorry, bro. And healers, well, actually, they are just healers. And resto druids, I mean, that are not resto because they are leveling in feral usually. Even then, they are kinda decent. Druids are pretty functional healers without talents, which is not something that all the classes can say, but they are still not very good. And even if they were to get resto talents, druids are still not very good healers. Sadly, druids are just a god-awful class in every single sense, but they can heal and they can tank kinda decently without talents. And for that reason, I'm gonna put them at a C. There is some use for them. God bless him. Now the Hunter. The Hunter has the great privilege of being able to fit in a melee cleaving or a spell cleaving composition pretty well because they provide a very powerful AoE slow. That's the freezing trap, of course. The pet is also really handy when it comes to melee weaving. It is just another tank to split up the aggro, and that's the strategy with melee cleaving, to split up the aggro amongst many DPSers and nobody's tanking, everybody's DPSing, so you get one more slot that would have gone to a tank to just another DPSer, and that is what makes melee cleaving efficient. Of course, the Hunter is not as good as, say, a Warrior, but they are pretty good and the utility is also really handy. When it comes to the very sophisticated, the very big pulls in spell cleaving, they can also use Eyes of the Beast to pull because Warlocks got nerfed. Warlocks do not have IO Kill Rock to pull anymore. It's not gonna transfer aggro anymore. So Hunters are actually the best pullers now for spell cleaving. So Hunters get an in everywhere and they are just really useful, so they're gonna go in A. Nobody's gonna complain that they got a Hunter in the group. Now the Mage. The Mage is pretty much a staple of dungeons. They got water for free. Free water is amazing. They got a D-Course, which is free utility. There is a lot of nasty courses. For example, in SFK, you need a D-Course for SFK. Frost Nova is a lifesaver. Frost Nova, I cannot overstate how important Frost Nova is for a dungeon group. An AoE route that you can use to get out when you're taking a lot of damage or when you accidentally pull and you can just run away. Mage has also got an AoE slow in the shape of Cone of Cold. That is, I think, level 34. That's a little high, but it's still out there and it's really good. They got Blizzard, of course. If they are Frost, they can just get an AoE slow, an AoE that does a lot of damage, and mages are the ultimate AoE class. You cannot do a spell cleaving group without a mage, and mages are just some of the most versatile and strongest best DPSs in the game, so they are gonna go straight to S tier. Mages are always good for a spell cleaving group. When it comes to paladins, actually, believe it or not, protection paladins are not that bad. They are not protection though, they are holy. Why are they holy? Because Consecrate is a holy talent, but if you put your Righteous Fury on you, you get extra threat and you can get really decent AoE threat. Prot paladins are a viable tank for a bunch of dungeons because they tank trash very well. They are not for everybody, and they are probably not as good as a warrior, but they can do it. And on top of that, if they are holy, they can just heal, so that's a double whammy right there. Paladins are decent healers. They are not the greatest healers out there, but if you level as Retribution, because most paladins level as Retribution, they can still heal pretty decently. Paladins bring blessings. Blessings are broken. You got Blessing of Might, Attack Power, Blessing of Wisdom, free mana. They got an aura that gives everybody play armor, so that's also great. And overall, they are never your first choice, but paladins are pretty good. They are gonna go on B. Now the priest. The thing about the priest is level 1 to 40, you level as discipline. You level as discipline for the improved 1 talent, the 1 in damage, and that means that they are leveling with healing talents, a lot of healing talents, especially the extra shield value that they get from their power word shield. That's a talent they take. They also take fortitude. So they are amazing healers as their leveling spec. And that's like one of the main things that makes healers broken. Of course, healers got a hot in Renew. They got a shield, which is the only healer in the game with a shield. And their output is pretty good. So healers are pretty much perfect in every single way. And they are the most broken healer for leveling. And for that reason, they are going on S. And no, do not take a Shadow Priest. Shadow Priests are terrible. They produce so much freaking threat. They do like 2 globals and they pull aggro on everything. Their damage sucks. And they run out of mana in 5 seconds. So do not take a Shadow Priest. But Healer Priest, best in the game. Best in the game. Now the Rogue. The Rogue is actually a bit of a problem. The Rogue really does not have any identity in a dungeon. Their AoE is crap, their single target is okay, their single target is pretty decent, but 90% of a dungeon you spend it clearing trash, and they do very poorly in trash. Almost any other class can beat them in damage in trash. They provide pretty much no utility. They got stuns, that's okay, they got interrupts like a warrior, and they got lockpicking for the chest. And that's pretty much it. This is gonna be the number one controversial thing I'm gonna do here, but I honestly do not like rogues. I do not like them in my group. They do not provide me any value, and their damage is not that great early on, so I am gonna put them on D. They are just a crappier warrior. Now the Shaman, of course, at level 32, they get Wind Fury Totem, one of the best melee buff in the game, 20% chance that you get an extra auto attack, and that generates rage, so warriors love Wind Fury. They get an AoE slow in the shape of Earthbind Totem. Earthbind Totem is absolutely broken. It makes everything way safer, and it allows the tank to kite. If you got a melee tanks, and they can just move away from the mobs when they take too much damage, and that is huge. At level 40 they get Chain Heal. Chain Heal is the most mana efficient heal in the game, and it can heal multiple targets, so that makes them pretty much the ideal healer for melee cleaving. They do not take a melee spot, they provide the best buff in the game, and they can heal. So you can take 4 warriors and a shaman, and that's the best composition in the freaking game. Even as DPSers, Wind Fury is so much value that they are still very good. Even though enhancement is not that great damage, ironically, they tend to do more damage than a rogue until level like 45 or so, because they got Fire Nova Totem, and Fire Nova is great damage. When you're doing like 4 mobs, you drop a Fire Nova, it does a lot of damage in AoE, so they are really good. And for that reason, the Shaman is gonna go straight to S tier. Now the Warlock. The number one utility, the number one reason you get a Warlock is for summons. I am not even kidding. There is no summoning stones in vanilla. In classic, the closet doesn't exist. And you can make an argument that the Warlock is gonna make your dungeons the most efficient out of any class. Because if you gotta wait for everybody to get there, that is time too. The Warlock has decent AoE, and if the Warlock is an absolute tryhard, they can use the Voidwalker to be a spare tank on melee cleaving. They can also work at melee cleavers. They got another fear, and they can even talent into an AoE fear, so that's another way to help the pulls, and they possess a pretty decent AoE in the shape of Rain of Fire or Hellfire. If you do Hellfire, you're gonna die, but Rain of Fire is really good. It does about the same damage as a Blizzard, so they are pretty much perfect for a spell cleaving group, and they work very well with melees because they do not need to drink. That's their main feature. They can turn HP into mana, so they can just keep going forever in a melee cleaving group, and they do not take your melee gear, so I am gonna drop the Warlock on A. Very solid, everybody's happy to have one of these, but they are not the best. And finally the Warrior. Now if you think of Warrior, you think of tanking. The Warrior is the ultimate tank in vanilla pretty much. When you're leveling, of course, you level with a two-hander and you tank with a two-hander. I made a whole guide on that. But they can output some pretty decent damage even though they are tanking the whole time, and they are pretty effective at it once you master them. But something that people do not talk much about is that Warriors, actually once they get level 36, they are some of the best DPSers in the game. It doesn't take all the way to 60 to crank as a Warrior. At level 36 you get Sweeping Strikes because you level as arms, disarms, of course. It doubles up all your auto attacks, and that makes them very, very nasty, especially if you are Horde and you get Wind Fury level 32, because Wind Fury procs also double from her sweeping strikes. So you can do sweeping strikes and cleave, you get a quadruple hit from that because cleave doubles up of itself, that's 4 attacks in one swing, and on top of that you get a Wind Fury proc, that is 6 total attacks. Of course, Whirlwind is gonna be an instant attack that hits 4 targets. So their 4 target situation, you know, like a trash pack is basically 4 mobs. They are the best class in the game for DPSing them down once they get to level 36 or so. And of course, they do not need mana. So one of the most effective ways to level in the game is to take a healer and 4 warriors, and they are all DPSers and they all share the aggro, and they just DPS at full speed the whole time. It is deceptively easy to heal, by the way, because there is no single big spike on one guy taking all the damage. They got an AoE Fear. AoE Fear is amazing because when you are away from everything and you just AoE Fear, that is basically a reset where you can get a bandage off. It is great at emergencies too. And on top of that, they got Retaliation, an ability where you just, every time you get hit, you return damage. That is a 30-minute cooldown, but if you're in real trouble, you can just pop Retaliation and AoE Taunt, and you are gonna destroy everything so fast that it's not gonna be a problem. That's the secret of melee cleaving. You kill the mobs so fast that they are not dangerous anymore. If the mobs die super fast, they are rarely a problem for the healer to handle. Also, something that's very slept on, Disarm is an insane ability. Disarm can work on most bosses and it will reduce their damage by a lot. Not to mention Battle Shout, the attack power buff, and Demoralizing Shout, the attack power reduction on mobs. Warriors are just mandatory. They are the ultimate melee, they are broken in every aspect of the game, and leveling in dungeons is no exception. They suck at solo, but with a healer, they have no weakness whatsoever, and that's their main strength. So the warrior is also gonna go to S. And there you have it. Do you disagree with this tier list? I am sure I'm gonna hear about it. I am sure you're gonna disagree with this tier list right now. You're typing that little comment out there. I see you. Tell me why. Subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.